That's they came on TV. Nobody can hear. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. It's 8:05 p.m. This is the Wednesday, October 13th meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Lawrence City Council. For those of you that have been waiting, I, on behalf of my colleagues, appreciate your patience. The committee before us dealt with important matters relative to the schools, and we needed to let that complete, and it has, and we are underway. So with that, before I call this meeting to order, I will read the legal stuff here with COVID-19 that enables us to do this virtually. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so at the following locations. They're stipulated on our posted agenda, and they would be both the City Council YouTube channel as well as social media. Both addresses can be found on the City Council website. With that, I would call the meeting of October 13th to order, and I would ask that we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I would note that we have all members present this evening. I'm joined this evening by councilors at large, Anna Levy and Pavel Payano, as well as my colleague from District D, Mr. Rodriguez, and I am Dave Abdu from District E. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Maria Halloran, who is our clerk this evening, and John Mejia for making the video and technology happen. With that, I would call to order this meeting and call the first item, which is 22321, order to expend grant funds, Rondon family donation in the amount of $5,000 as brought to us this evening by our fire chief, Brian Moriarty. Chief Moriarty, the floor is yours. Please identify yourself and tell us why we're here this evening.
Chief Moriarty, right here. I think you recognize me now. I've been lucky enough, or I should say the Lawrence Fire Department has been lucky enough to be recognized by the Rondon Family Foundation with a second donation for from their organization, their fund, to our fire department for the work that we've done in recognition of the gas crisis. They gave us a donation a little over a year ago, and we purchased a high lift airbag. They surprised me to come back so quickly to make another donation to us. They were quite gracious and have given us with your.
If everyone could just mute their.
Can you? There you go. Sorry, I was distracted a little. They gave us another $5,000. I had not expected this and did not immediately come up with any item to tell them that I would purchase, and they said that they were not worried about that. They just wanted to help the fire department get some more equipment that we need. So that being said, I always think we could use some more equipment. We have reserve trucks that aren't fully equipped as well as they could be. We try to keep our primary trucks equipped. I've not set anything in stone. I'm looking and pricing, trying to see what we could get the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak, out of. But the gift needs to be accepted by the council. And so this is the procedure we have to go through. And if you would accept it, there's a $5,000 unrestricted, unmatched donation to the Lawrence Fire Department to buy equipment.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And for those at home or may have recently moved to our community, Lionel Rondon was the lone member of our community that lost his life on and around the events of September 13th, 2018. And once again, we send our condolences to his family, and we are greatly appreciative of them sharing this opportunity with us in memory of their son. With that unrestricted $5,000 for our fire department, I have no questions. Are there members that have questions, comments, or motions?
I would like to make a motion to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second that, but I do have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. The motion was made by Mr. Rodriguez. It's been properly seconded by Mr. Payano, and I would acknowledge Ms. Payano for the sake of discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Moriarty, for being with us tonight. So I know that you've mentioned equipment on the documents that you sent to us. You said it's to fund the radio equipment.
Not this.
Oh, no, not this. Okay.
The next one. The next
Oh,
one.
the next one. Okay.
This one,
Got it.
I did not submit any type of equipment yet. It was
Okay.
kind of a, here it is, fella. Okay, no.
Understood. So for the next one, you already know what my question is. What is the radio equipment? Because I saw, it was capitalized, both. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's a specific thing. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. Are there further questions, comments during this discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask our clerk, Ms. Halloran, to please take the roll.
Councillor Levy,
Yes.
Councillor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councillor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes to favorably recommend this to the full council at our next meeting next Tuesday, the 19th. Thank you for that, Chief. The next item, once again presented by our chief, is item number 22421, order to expend grant funds, emergency management performance grant in the amount of $25,600, once again by Chief Moriarty. Sir, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. And Councilor Payano, this is what part of my multi-tiered plan. During the gas crisis, we were dinged a little bit, I guess if it would be the right, but the NTSB said our interoperability could have been better, that it was, and not just us, they blamed the whole state, and the head of MEMA at the time said, it's hard to it's hard to train on something that only happens once in a lifetime. But we have endeavored in the Lawrence Fire Department to improve regardless of whether it's hard to train. And what we have been able to do, and unfortunately it's cost restrictive, is we've slowly started to improve our radios. We've gotten the comm unit. We've had that upgraded with funds from NARAC and the communications committee there. They've given us some money and upgraded our radios and repeaters. And I am adamant, strongly trying to get every firefighter a multi-band radio. What that allows us to do is plug in the state's frequency that they have a chart, a book, so to speak. It's thicker than a chart of what frequencies should be on which zone and what channels. And it allows us to go anywhere in the state and talk. And that is interoperability at its best. And it is a UHF as well as a VHF radio, which they stand for ultra high frequency or very high frequency, different bands on the spectrum. But they're expensive and we couldn't afford to do it all at once. Even with the money I got from the gas company and the radios they bought, and they did buy me some during the event, I couldn't equip all 125 firefighters with the dual band radios. So we're slowly doing that as we get money and funds like this, which is set up for emergency management performance. We are improving our radios, and that way we're all on the same channel, so to speak. And if we go mutual aid, we can be on theirs just as easily as we can be on ours channel and a frequency to talk. And that's important in our community because Andover uses UHF. Lawrence, we use VHF. North Andover uses UHF. Methuen, simulcast, they can use both. But we go to New Hampshire too. We've been to Salem, New Hampshire, and they have many different frequencies. Then there's VTAC frequencies, which are set up just for these big crisis events. So if we were to be assigned to a task force to head out to Western Mass, they'd say, you're going to go to VTAC 14 or whatever the number is. And this radio or these radios will allow us to do that. So it's really just a chance for us to improve what the NTSB found was one of our weaknesses during our emergency response. And we're doing a little at a time to make operations smoother and safer. Hope I answered your question.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, you did, Chief. Thank you very much for the lesson. With that, I'd like to make a motion to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
There's a motion.
Before I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Payano, would you withdraw your question? Would you be amenable to withdrawing?
Yep, I withdraw my question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Council
Padilla.
Levy, the floor is yours.
Yes. Chief, how many unit or how many of those units you have it right now?
Right now, how many do we have?
Yes.
We have approximately 60.
And how old are they?
They're not old.
They are not old.
I
So
got
the
them.
new unit is not old.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
There is no old, you say.
No, our radios are not old.
Okay.
But I was not able to get all dual band radios because of the cost. So I wanted everybody to have a radio because when you're trapped in a house fire and you can't see and you think you're alone, you don't want to be screaming through your mask. You want to make contact with your radio, send out your emergency beacon. So everyone has a radio, but they don't all have this particular multi-band radio. I'm working on getting that. This will buy me another 3 to 4.
Okay. So,
Piecemeal,
okay.
we're getting there. It's a long-term plan, but best laid plans are, I screwed up that phrase, but you know what I was trying to say.
Something is something, no? Okay. Thank you again for your answer and thank you for letting know.
Thank you for your questions, Council Levy, and thank you, Chief, for your responses. Are there any, Mr. Rodriguez?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Pavel, Councilor Payano, you're not the only one that get educated on this radio. Last year, I did the same thing. I was asking the same questions. And but Chief, let me ask you, how you distribute those radios? I mean, each house has some or what?
Oh, every station has some, but the offices all have these radios first, and then I give them to the senior firefighters because they're most likely the ones that will be working out of grade, which is it's a 4-man crew. If the officer is off, the senior firefighter works as the officer. He needs to be able to do that communications, and we're doing pretty good at that. We're pretty well covered. It won't be too much longer because those other radios I can put to positions that are not life-threatening mutual aid, fire inspectors, day people,
Okay. So in each radio costs about how much?
Off the top of my head, I think they were around $7,000 each. They changed a little bit. But I've been working closely with the radio company because I didn't like the lapel mics, and they sent me 6 the other day for free that are different. That'll stop. Open mics drive me nuts at a fire, and these guys and women work very hard, and we're slinging axes and moving lines, and it hits the lapel mic and it gives an open mic. You hear it click, click, click all the time. So this lapel mic you have to squeeze both sides in order for it to transmit. So it cuts out that open mic. You don't hear that. If it hits one side, it doesn't activate it. So I'm making all these little steps to make our system better. And I think I'm getting there. I think we're doing a good job. But stuff is expensive and we don't have a lot of extra money. So we're doing everything we can to
No, and I definitely appreciate it because I think it's that's the right it is 80 when you do things little by little, it's a concept that you implement and you've been doing it right. It's little by little you make the changes at the end. If you don't start with something that is small, you're never gonna get the bit too big. And I appreciate that definitely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Are there further comments, questions, or motions?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that sends to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Mr. Payano has made a motion to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation. It's been properly seconded by Councilor Levy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Ms. Halloran, please call the roll call.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. This motion passes 4-0 to send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation. And I would thank the chief for his contributions tonight, and we'll see you or representative next Tuesday.
Thank you very much, councilors. And thanks for the quote, Eileen. I got the full quote now, so next time I'll have it. Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, chief. The next 3 items will be presented by Eileen Burnell, the Director of Support Services, on behalf of the Lawrence Police Department. The first item is 225-21, order to expend grant funds FY22 Municipal Road Safety Grant up to $49,977, presented by Ms. Burnell. Ms. Burnell, the floor is yours. Please identify yourself and tell us why we are here this evening.
Thank you, Counselor. Eileen Burnell from the Lawrence Police Department, 257 Mount Vernon Street. The police department was invited to apply for a grant through the Office of Public Safety and Security for municipal road safety, or we often refer to as a traffic grant. It's up to $49,000, which would be a reimbursement of overtime for officers. They have targeted operations that they want the officers to do, be it something regarding OUI or safety belts, safety, speeding. So they have very specific requirements for these traffic enforcement standouts that we would do, but at the same time, they would pay the officers for that overtime. And so that is a grant we have gotten for the last few years. Each year has increased slightly, and this year they're offering $49,977. So we have applied, we have been received the award, and now we need the council's approval before we can expend those funds.
Thank you, Councilor Brunel. I have no questions. Colleagues, questions, Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes, I have a quick question. Who is Municipal Road Safety? I mean, who's that organization?
That's not an organization. That's just the name of the grant. The grant comes through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, or they call it EOPS, which is part of the state government.
Okay.
But that particular
Never mind.
grant, sorry, thank
Gotcha.
you.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Thank you for your response, Ms. Brunel. Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Ms. Burnell. Do you have an idea of how many, the amount of hours? You said there's overtime hours, but do we have like a total? Is it 100 overtime hours, 200 overtime hours?
So it works out to, trying to do some quick math in my head. It's usually they require that it be up to a 4-hour shift. It can't be like 1 or 2 hours here and there. And it usually works out to be about each bracket, they break it down, there's 5 different times, like we'll do a winter, then a spring, and and each one is about 120 hours of overtime for each one of those units. I'm not describing that well, and I apologize.
Okay, so you just said about 120 hours per bracket.
So times 5. So it'll be like 600 hours, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. Other questions, comments, or motions by other counselors?
Like to make a motion to send it to the full council with favorable recommendation.
Second.
There's been a motion to send this item 22521 to the full council with a favorable recommendation. It was properly seconded by Councilor Levy. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Clerk Halloran, please call the roll.
Or Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes with a favorable recommendation 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Brunel. And the last item this evening is, no correction, second to last item. Order 22621. Order to expend grant funds FY22 SSYI grant in the amount of $700,000 presented once again by Ms. Brunel. Eileen, floor is yours.
Thank you, Counselor. The city has, for the last 8 years, has been receiving this SSYI grant. It's through the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, and we partner with the local agency known as Family Development, but they use their SISU, SISU. The SISU Center is basically the partner or the portion of their agency that we partner with on that grant, and it's specifically targeted to at-risk youth or proven risk youth. That means youth that have had interaction with the courts already, as opposed to just traditional youth in the community. They do a wonderful job. They're one of their members is on the meeting tonight, Paul Heighthouse. If you have questions for him specifically about the programs that they run, we partner with them. We have a detective who works with them to help identify youth, to funnel them to their programs. We also work with probation on that piece of it. But the bulk of this grant does go to our partner, which is Family Development or the SISU Center, to run their programs that they run in compliance with the SSYI grant requirements.
Thank you. Great program, by the way. I would want to chip that in. And I have no questions. Other counselors, I see Councilor Rodriguez, and then I see Councilor Payano. Councilor Rodriguez, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for the opportunity. I have a quick questions. I know we've been having these issues before, but now it's been more like, more active within the community, which is the safety of the school department. Safety of the school, of the school in the city. We just have close to 80 parents or 80 people that were here discussing this issue. And now that we are talking about a grant for at-risk kids, I'm wondering to know if Paul can come up with that number. How many of the students that they serve also are going to the Lawrence Public School? And how can we, if we can partner with somehow at-risk child that are being identified by then, to not necessarily provide the service that you guys do in depth, but some type of counseling or some type of showing the real life. I mean, showing something that show them that this is the reality out here. If you do something wrong, you might go into this path, and we don't want to see you here. Something like that. I don't know. Something just to think outside of the box. So it's 2 questions on that.
I would want to note that we are joined this evening by Paul. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Heighthouse.
You said that correct.
Outstanding. Councilor Rodriguez, did you want to direct that to him?
Please.
All right, Mr. Heighthouse, the floor is yours.
So Councilor Rodriguez, I have our numbers right in front of me. So during last fiscal year, which ended June 30th, we had about 144 young people on the SSYI list. About 30 of them were enrolled in school. The vast majority of those would be at Lawrence High School. I think in regards to the school, the criteria that the state has set for who can be involved with the SSYI program is pretty strict. And so we have to follow the guidelines. They have to be referred and approved by Detective Ayala. They have to meet 5 very specific criteria. which basically pairs down to they have to be considered a leader in a gang and involved with weapons related activity in the city. So, and as it turns out, the vast majority of the young people in the program, it specifically serves young people ages 17 to 24. The vast majority are between the ages of 20 and 22. So they have completed high school as it is. And then your second question was, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my second questions will be, and just to go back to what you just said. No, we understand that the under this grant you probably won't be able to serve them.
Right.
But as an organization that actually is serving the community and doing a great job, that goes beyond this grant. I think that somehow we can partner up and do something about it. And perhaps a more kind of like, we have a couple of incidents, a couple of kids, couple of young men that were arrested yesterday and I believe today, or one of the 2 days. And those kids, they were arrested because of the situation happening at the Lawrence site. Somehow we can definitely try to get in touch with them, even though it's not part of the grant. But I mean, just to see if we can somehow mitigate the issue, if it is any type of support, probably that we can identify that they can have eventually down the road, or any support that we can provide them. I'm not saying that we're going to take those kids on the program under this grant, but probably an extra effort, knowing the fact that you guys have dealt with so many kids in the city, probably in the last 8 years, more than 1,000. You guys have several already. So something related to that. I just don't want to just let this opportunity go without mentioning that it could be a gap between the organization and the school system for you guys to provide some type of service or a guidance or something related to that effect.
So I'm actually glad you mentioned that. Outside of the SSYI program, Ralph Carrero and I have been working with Sueños basketball to pilot a program at the CSU Center that targets those at-risk young people. We're looking specifically at 6th grade through 10th or 11th grade, targeting those young people that are sort of on that brink. They don't qualify for the SSYI program. If there's not an intervention, we may be seeing them referred to us by the SSYI, for the SSYI program or by the courts. We are working on kicking off that program right now with Sueños, and the goal will be to use athletics as well as social emotional programming, mental health, life skills, and additional pro-social recreational programming to target these young people and put them into a program in a setting where they can access these programs that we hope will kind of help them not end up with our other programs.
Yep. Something related to that effect. I mean, I just want to, make sure that, we think outside of the box. We not just, focus on what this is. Instead, we can actually see the resource we have available around and see how we can, spread those experiences and those resources, if we got any, or any ideas of how we can prevent those kids from doing what they're doing. Probably sometime a conversation hope. It's not going to avoid the whole issue, but the intention is to open up and be able to help. That's all.
And, I think that this is a conversation that Ralph and myself and our CSU staff would love to continue having with members of the council. Because I think that we have some ideas. A lot of it is just making sure that there are resources in place so that we can put those ideas into action. Right now, one of our biggest issues is just staffing. And it's not even not having the money for staffing, it's finding individuals who are interested in working with our program. And from what I understand, this is an issue across the spectrum. I was talking to someone from Family Services and they're having trouble filling positions. Someone from Children, Friends, and Family, they're having trouble filling positions. But no, I think that this is a conversation that we would love to have with the council.
Yeah, I would like to extend an invitation to you and your staff to be at the safety committee meeting that we're going to be hosting tomorrow at 7 p.m. So you can definitely express that those needs. There were about 80 people today at the Zoom meeting that we have, and I'm pretty sure that there were people that were parents and others that wanted to just help the youth, and that's a great platform to probably share some of the opportunities available, and also just talk about it. We just need to talk. We have to have a conversation. That's what we want. And thank you for being here.
I'll make sure to mention that to my colleagues as well for tomorrow evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Thank you, Mr. Heidhaus. Are there other questions or comments or motions? Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Paul. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here tonight. So, my question is, I'm interested in understanding. So first, let's start off. What is the? I mean, I think I'm pretty knowledgeable about the program, but for outsiders, how would you define the goal of the program?
The goal of the program is to identify and target what we consider the highest risk young people in the city, ages 17 to 24. That within itself can be a full-time job, not only identifying them, but tracking them down. And then once we've tracked them down and opened up a dialogue, there are any number of things that we do with them, but the ultimate goal is to help them develop a path to becoming a more productive citizen, helping to get them out of criminal activity, helping to hopefully place them in a legitimate job. And going along with that, there's so much that has to be done to get them there. I wish I could say that it was a matter of identifying these young people and helping them find a job and placing them into a job. But so much of our work involves essentially retraining them, starting from scratch with them, breaking it down to the most basics of teaching them proper communication skills, conflict management skills, time management, and putting them in situations where we develop consequences for their behavior. Those incidents are dealt with in real time. And while there are consequences, leaving the door open that we're not ever saying, you've done something, now you can't be a part of the program. It's allowing them to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and presenting them with a alternative path forward. That could be anything from a large part of the program is providing stipends to the young people. And part of that could be losing your stipend for a week, to being busted down a level to the type of employment opportunity or the type of in-house employment opportunity that you might have, to being what we call, essentially being put on hold for a week, which means that you can't come into the center. You have to interact with the staff out in the community. The first goal is to identify if they've completed their education. If they haven't completed their education, we work with them on either re-enrolling in school or beginning a high-set program. It's also working with our mental health partners to do a full assessment and really determine what their mental health needs are and what services can be provided. Now that presents a challenge within itself, because the idea of mental health is not something that most of these young people are open to discussing or talking about or exploring. But we try to present it in a non-combative way, in a way that they might be open to it. And then it is, let's talk about why you really, how we really got you in the door. Let's talk about ways that you can make money, and realistic ways. And everybody comes in and they just want us to find them a well-paying full-time job, or they want to buy a new car. And so we sit down with them and we break it down to the most basics. And we say, okay, if you want a full-time job, let's talk about what you need to do to get a full-time job that's going to help you earn money to buy a house and buy a car. That may be as basic as, okay, you haven't completed high school. What kind of job do you think that you'll be able to get without a high school education versus what type of job can you get with a high school education? So let's work on getting an education. You don't have a driver's license. Let's work on, in order to get that job, you need a car. So let's work on getting you a driver's license. You need a different wardrobe for the type of job that you want. So let's work on changing your wardrobe. Let's work on getting you some clothes. Let's prepare you for a job interview. So it's really breaking everything down to the basics, to the most bare level, and helping these young people understand, one, that there is no instant gratification. You can't just snap your fingers and change things around. Life is about making difficult choices and putting in the work. And it's helping them to make those choices. Even if they don't make the right one the first time, working with them on making the right one the next time, or figuring out what the right choice looks like. We on average estimate that it takes 2 to 3 years for us to really get a young person to the point where they are ready to begin looking for work or beginning to move beyond the services that we're providing in the program. Just because for so many of them, we're providing them with that social emotional learning that many of us take for granted that they never had. So we're starting over with a lot of them. So.
Paul, do you have perhaps any document that you can share with us that we might be able to look at, like sort of like recidivism rate and just like, other sort of stats of the program? I think that would definitely be helpful, especially as we talk about the program and we talk about the benefits. I offhand, I have a lot of anecdotal data just with the youth that I've been sort of connecting with and serving last couple of years. But I think it'd be great for the counselors to have data on hand that can show the value of the program and how these funds are being well spent. And the impact that it's having in the community.
So I actually have a spreadsheet open right now that I can send to you all, which is all the data that we reported with the state at the end of the year. So there's certain things that the state looks at, certain benchmarks, certain goals that we have to set. And so this report is the various benchmarks that the state has set for us, where we work towards meeting them. It also looks at what the statewide average was towards meeting them and how we compared to that statewide average. So I can put that together and send it to you all. I know at one point, the last time that we had met, I tried to send something out, and it was when the city's email system had gone down and I didn't have additional email addresses. So is the best way to get this to you all is to send it to your city email addresses? All right. So I will send something out tomorrow. I'll put it into a Word document, and I'll just break down the different benchmarks that the state looks at and where the city of Lawrence was in relation to those benchmarks.
Great. And my last question, Paul, I know that there was work being done with the community libraries.
Yep.
So, I believe it was the same group of kids. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes, it is.
And my question is, so like I think these type of activities are great because it, with a lot of the youth, I think it's important, especially the youth that have gone through this trouble with the system. There is this belief that the system doesn't care about them. So why give back to the system? So I see like these type of opportunities as a way to get these youth to start thinking about ways to give back to their community. And they're also seeing the positive, not just the positive impact, but how positively they're looked at, and how the value that they're feeling valued. So I think that those are super important. And I would say that I hope that as all of you are planning for your next stages, that some of these that you build into your not project, you build into the program an opportunity for youth themselves to create leadership skills by telling the program, like, hey, we should do this next. And I think that, anytime that you allow for these opportunities, I won't say anytime, but most times that you allow for these opportunities, you'll be very surprised by the outcome and that experiential learning piece where they are thinking for themselves instead of being, kind of going down like sort of like the order that they were told to do, allows them to expand their critical thinking and thereby question their previous actions and the illegal organizations that they might have been a part of.
So I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, because that is something that we've been trying to do for the past several years. The libraries themselves came out of the minds of our young people during the pandemic as a way that they could give back. We always require that our young people complete community service projects. That was something that they came up with during the pandemic, when we asked them to identify an issue that they felt impacted themselves and their families in the city, and they identified illiteracy. And then our staff worked with them to research ideas as to how they could address this issue in the city with their skills. Also, we've launched a screen printing shop at the CSU Center, which is another idea that came out of the young people. We had kind of put the question to them several years ago: what are some skills or things that you would like to develop, some skills or talents that you'd like to further develop at the CSU Center? Fashion and art are always big ones with them. So we kind of worked with them to flesh out, well, what did that mean? And we were fortunate enough to get some grants to purchase all the equipment for a screen printing studio. We were able to hire a screen printing instructor. We have young people working in the studio. We're working with them right now on the idea of doing some art development so that they can create their own line of t-shirts. A lot of that goes back to the idea of instant gratification. They want to draw something and have it put on a shirt, and there's much more to a project than that. But yeah, so we have really tried to give them a voice in what they do at the CSU Center and what sort of projects that we take on, or what sort of activities that we conduct.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Mr. Chair. No further
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Payano. Further comments, questions, motions?
I'd like to make a motion to send this to the full council with favor recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Payano to send this item to the full council with a favorable recommendation. It's been properly seconded by Councilor Levy. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Clerk Halloran, please call the roll.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Chairman David.
Chair votes yes. This item will go to the full council with a favorable recommendation with a 4-0 vote. Thank you all. And Mr. Heithaus, thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you all. See you later.
Next item is item number 22821, order to expend grant funds, federal fiscal year 19, PSN grant from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security in the amount of $49,731 as presented by Councilor Brunel. Eileen, floor is yours.
Thank you, Counselor. The police department was invited by the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to apply for a grant through their Project Safe Neighborhood program. This is a technology and equipment grant. And we would be using it to work on our camera system. And it is for $49,731. That's the amount that they offer us. So we have applied for it. We are told it will be awarded to us on November 1, and we're looking for the council approval to expend those funds when they're awarded at this time.
Thank you. Counselors, are there questions? Hearing none. Is there any questions, comments, or motions? Of any kind?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Payano?
uh, Ms. Bernal, if you could, can you just repeat? So what is this funding going to be? What is this funding going to be used for?
Sure. This is a technology grant, so it has to be used on equipment and technology. So basically, they want you to use it on something like cameras. So that's what we would be using it as on our camera system to allow us to replace some older cameras that are failing, and then to get some new cameras in some additional locations. So $49,000 would buy us about 9 to 10 cameras of a higher quality. And so that's what we would like to do with that money. And if we're, we need the council's approval, obviously, to spend those funds.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Is a motion by Mr. Payano. It's been properly seconded by Mr. Rodriguez to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Halloran, please call the roll.
Sure. Councillor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Councillor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councillor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. This item will be recommended to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Ms. Brunel, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, councilors, for your support on all 3 items. We really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last item this evening, item number 23421, last new item this evening. Item number 23421, tax collection and local receipts update for fiscal year 2022, as presented by our colleague, Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, I'd like to turn the floor over to you to tell us about this item.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. So essentially what I would like to, well, pretty sure many of my colleagues would like to hear this as well. I would like to get an update on tax collections and local receipts update for fiscal year 2022 as of how we're doing in terms of that aspect. We always talk about the budget in the collections of taxes during the budget season, but after that, until we do the requalification, we don't hear anything else. So essentially, having an update as of how we're doing city-wise and how healthy or probably in trouble we are during the middle of the year, it will be very helpful. And that's the reason as of why we have this item there. And the item could be linked to many different issues or perhaps questions we have in terms of this regard. So that's basically why I send that over. So I hope that probably our CAFO, Mark Ayanello, have something for the council.
Mr. Ainello, you care to address that?
Yeah, I spoke to Councilor Rodriguez this afternoon. He came to my office and we discussed it. So yeah, I can prepare a budget to actual report for him. We'll have it. We'll have it within the week.
All right, thank you so much. So if any other councilor have questions, we can definitely discuss this. Otherwise, I would like to make a motion to table if it's not. It's nothing else.
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez, one question. Through you.
I'll draw my
Chairman.
motion.
Mr. Rodriguez has withdrawn his motion. Ms. Levy?
It's just only regarding the collection of the taxes, or it's gonna be more elaborated, so on whatever other income or money that we are getting through the city.
It's more related to taxes, but like I said, the item could be linked to any particular situation regarding collections that we have in the city of Lawrence and local receipts, which is pretty open.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adu, Councilor Adu, through you, can I ask a question also to Mark Janello regarding how much money do we have on the account for the oh my God.
Free cash?
Yes, thank you.
Well, free cash was just approved this morning for July. As of July 1, 21, we had roughly, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's roughly 16.5 million.
16.5 million. So this
That's
is
correct.
okay, so this is after we have received the money from COVID, so the spending that we already been doing.
No, this doesn't have anything to do with COVID or the COVID grant funds that we received. This is just the results of operations for the past year. The year ended 6/30/21. The Department of Revenue comes and does a certification of our free cash. It's kind of it's a term unique to Massachusetts. It doesn't exist in the accounting language anywhere else in the country. It's just here in Massachusetts. They have this thing called free cash, but basically it's our funds that are results of operations from the previous year. That's in general what it is. Last year we had an FY, as of 7/1/20, we had 18.8 million, and as of 7/1/21, it was we saw a little reduction to 16.5 million, but that's because we allocated, we used roughly 2 million in free cash, or this FY21. We used some of our free cash to reduce the FY22 budget.
So we used about 2 million from the free cash that we had just to reduce.
Well, it's just the results of operations are a little bit less than the prior year because of COVID. We earned less interest income. For example, one of our local receipts in prior year was well over $1 million, and this year we only saw about 200,000. So that's an 800,000 to 1.3 million decrease in interest income alone. So there are other examples of it like that with our local receipts. Last year we used approximately, I think we used approximately $9 million in free cash in the prior year. In FY21, we started the year with 18.8 million, and we ended the year with approximately 10 million. So we used approximately $9 million worth of free cash for various purposes that we came down to the council for to use. I don't have the list in front of me, but there are various miscellaneous items. The largest item that we used it for is at the end of the year, and we use it to wipe out our snow and ice account. That's the largest item that we used last year.
So you said that as of June 30, we had approximately 16,000.5.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. So, and as of today, we have used approximately $2 million from that amount to lower the expenses for 22.
No, that was in the prior year. This year we
Mhm,
haven't,
prior
that's the balance we have. We haven't used any of it. It just got approved this morning. So the 16.5 million is the balance in that account as we speak.
Would you be able to send a report on this, please?
Sure, I can forward you the email from the state, I suppose, but, or I can at least give you the exact amount.
Yeah, I think so that we will appreciate it also so you can send the email to us.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Levy.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms. Brianello. I would use this opportunity as chair to ask Mr. Brianello to reach out to me tomorrow regarding the constituent issue dating back a couple of weeks ago. Thank you, sir. Thank you to my colleagues for indulging me. Any further questions or comments or motions, which I believe one was withdrawn from Ms. Levy?
Motion to table.
second,
The motion was made by Mr. Payano to table. It was properly seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. There is no discussion. Ms. Halloran, please take the roll.
Or Counselor Anna Levy,
Yeah.
Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez,
yes,
Counselor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
And the chair votes yes. This item is tabled by a 4-0 vote. I want to thank Mr. Ianello for joining us this evening. Are there any table matters that any member would like to take off the table and discuss this evening?
yes, I would like to take item 15221 out of the table matters.
There is a motion by Mr. Rodriguez to take item number 15221 in order to expend grant funds, coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds in the amount of $57,351,845 as originally presented by Mr. Mark Ianello, our Chief Administrative and Finance Officer. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a second by Mr. Payano. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Discussion.
Aye. Oh,
Discussion.
Sorry, I withdraw. I made an illegal motion anyhow to just call the vote. It would have had to have been a roll call, so I will use that opportunity to call for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Payano.
Yeah, no, so I don't want to, I don't know if Councilor Rodriguez was planning on speaking on this at all.
no, it was, the motion was to take it out of table, so.
Oh,
we open-
I am sorry. It's been a long day. Take it out of table. My apologies, Mr. Chair. I will hold my discussion items till we have this on the floor.
Yes, sir. So with no further discussion, all those in favor of taking this item off the tables, Ms. Halloran, please call the roll.
Sure, Counselor Anna Levy.
Present.
I'm sorry, you said what?
I said present.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes,
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. This item is now off of the table. What is your pleasure, councilors? Mr. Rodriguez?
I
Anyone?
would like to open this up for discussion to see if we can send it over to the full council.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion to that effect, or?
I'll make a motion to send it to the full council as a committee report.
I have a few questions.
Okay, hearing no second, I will let it go and entertain questions. Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have a few questions too. I had the opportunity of reading the 2-page document that was sent to us by Mr. Jaramillo. And I believe he is with us today. So I have a few questions. either for him or for Mr. Ianello. I appreciate that we have some sort of like nice headlines for where this money is going to be spent. But I'm looking to see if we could get some more specific to these items. We were just presented with, for example, the Chief Moriarty talked about a $5,000 grant, and he explained how that money was gonna be used to the point where I'm pretty clear as how it's gonna be spent. I'm looking to see some more specifics when it comes to some of these items. So for example, we have to address the damage to assets owned by the City Office of Health and Human Services at the Senior Center, $2 million. Like I think there should be more explanation as to, damage of what assets. There's certain things that are not necessarily clear with this. And I'm wondering, is there, perhaps was there supplemental information or collateral information that was shared and perhaps I have just not have been privy to? Or is all the information that we should reviewing what was on that 2-page document?
Mr. Chairman, through the members, thank you, Councilor Payano, for the question. There has not been supplemental information to this document. Happy to respond to any specific questions related to this. Of course, we have a general idea of where we have an idea of, like, for example, for the item that you mentioned, the $2 million for the assets. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I kind of went into a little more detail in that meeting, but for the senior center in particular, the senior center has served as grounds for food distribution, COVID testing, and even prior to that, also responded directly to the public health crisis caused by the gas crisis, public health and public safety crisis. And a lot of the facility has been damaged just by virtue of having a lot of staff in there, having additional like furniture that the senior center is having to move around, therefore ruining floors, bathrooms, etc. in the senior center. And that this money hopes to address those issues to ensure that we can get back our senior center and have the community enjoy it again.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. And it sounds like that, some thought was put into more thought than just what's on the headline was put into that. And I appreciate that. I just want to recognize that. I think it'd be important to have that on paper. I think especially when we're dealing with matters of construction, matters of, if we offhand, I mean, there must be a reason that $2 million was put in there, right? The first question that someone's going to ask me is $2 million on what? Why $2 million? What are you going to, at the moment, I wouldn't have an answer to any of that. And that sounds like out of all the projects, that sounds like an easier one to sort of like kind of work through. So that way there's a little bit more specificity to that as well. Like they're, through all of them, like they sound like offhand, they all sound like good projects, interesting projects. But for example, to address disparities in health outcomes exacerbated the city standings as an environmental justice community and climate change. I mean, that sounds like it's worded incorrectly, but I think I understand the meaning behind it. But the first question that I have in mind is, are we, putting that as a grant for other organizations to work on? What exactly, how, like it's so broad that it's not necessarily, if a constituent were to ask me, again, how is this money going to be spent? I couldn't clearly state why. If you've noticed from some of the other grants that we received that we've just approved today, or we're sending to the full council, I'm sorry, not approved. We have a certain, so $45,000 is going to be spent on money for overtime, but we have an idea of how many hours that's going to be, on 600 hours. So there's a little bit more information to these items. And I wonder if it might be too much to ask all of you to sort of give us all that information for all of them, but is it possible to come back with at least one or two that are a little bit more defined so that we can ask good questions and at least, if members don't want to push the full thing, at least by, piece by piece, we'll be able to work this through.
Again, Mr. Chairman, through members, and thanks again, Councilor Payano, for that question. Yeah, so certainly some of these things, right? The numbers are based on quotes that we've gotten for things, in particular the construction projects, right? Things that have been quoted, if you will. For some of these things, right, they'll require more of a conversation around what needs to be done and the stakeholders, and therefore how much money we're going to spend right on them. Obviously, and actually, if I may, there's some things here that we're paying with other funds that we'd like to free up with ARPA money that have been quoted. We're going to hopefully continue to do. And there's some things here again that have been quoted that we know the exact cost of, right? As is the case for contaminated city-owned sites. We know roughly for at least two of the main sites, which are the Tamburello site, and Merrimack paper sites. We know rough monies that we'll need to do estimates on just the survey of the area, right? And that's why the number is there for that. Same for the access to broadband. We know generally, we know that it's going to cost upwards of $4 million for the broadband, and I round up here to 5, or the mayor rounds up, the administration rounds up here. And a lot of these is because, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, what we're seeing, even just some contracts, is we'll put out something for RFPs. Someone will accept the RFP, and we'll come back and deny the offer because materials are scarce, and we're having a real hard time, and particularly for construction projects, having a real hard time. Essentially, bidders are having a hard time maintaining within their own budgets, and coming back to us to say, hey, actually, we're not going to be able to do it for $4 million or for $1.5 million. It's going to take $2 million. And that's just, unfortunately, the price we're paying because of COVID. I foresee that in particular for the $19 million price tag for infrastructure, so water and sewer infrastructure projects. The real number is closer to 18.5 million. We can round up here to 19 million for the same reasons, and it could potentially be more. But I can certainly try to get a little bit more detailed, but again, some of these things, right, we won't know until we really actually go out to bid, and which is why I think I want to underscore the importance of being able to get this through to committee, at least for a further conversation, so that we can talk through these more and figure out exactly how the city will be spending this money.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. So through you, Mr. Chair. So I would say, like, while we might not know the exact amount until something is put to bid, I think that we still should be able to know, have a, not even just a good estimate, but clear as to what we're going to be bidding for. So right now, if, right now you couldn't just put out to bid to address disparities in health outcomes exacerbated the city standing as an environmental justice community. Like no one will know what that means. So I think like and again, I'm just one member. I think what I look for in any of these grants, whether it's $1,000 or in these cases, $19 million per item, is sort of a certain level of clarity that I understand the big picture. Not necessarily like, for example, the assets at the senior center. I don't think any of us are necessarily interested in knowing that, a certain table is going to cost $200, right? It's more of like, hey, we need to get this equipment in there, or we need to, whatever it might be. So, and then my last question to you, Mr. Jaramillo, is, especially with everything going on with the school system. I mean, not necessarily a question, but just a statement. I wonder if there's possibility of using this money to like think outside the box and creating some type of program that is focused on youth, a program that is focused on education. I think that there was a lot of social, emotional trauma that our youth dealt with these last year and a half. And I think it'd be important that as we're thinking about how to spend money, whether it's on infrastructure or programs that we might be interested in, that we also, think about our youth and the current sort of incidents that have happened at LPS. I think that there might be potential there to explore something different and innovative, and to support some of the agencies that are currently working with youth in this way. I know that there are other fundings for that, but I know that an organization like Sueños Basketball, like they're not necessarily looking for $1 million, right? Like there might be an opportunity, like with $10,000, they'd be able to serve a whole lot more kids than what they're doing now. So I think that there's an opportunity to use this money in a way that could really be impactful to the lives of people like right now. I think I see from my understanding of some of these programs, I mean, not that any of them sound horrible, but they all sound, a lot of them sound like, programs that, for example, broadband, right? That's a multi-year, will take several years in order to kind of, push this through. And what I will say with that one is, as you're thinking through like how to best describe it, I know that the city council, we did spend some money on, I don't know if it was a grant. Councilor Rodriguez and Councilor Abdu might have a better memory than myself, but there was money that was spent on coming up with I think maybe a plan or something around like Wi-Fi in the city, and expanding Wi-Fi or expanding broadband in the city, that I think we spent like over $100,000. And we didn't necessarily come out of that with any information as to how, the impact that occurred in the city. So when I will say that maybe my previous trauma, seeing something like that, it sort of like, I won't say red flags, but it sort of like raises concerns to making sure that, that we are fulfilling our role, when it comes to like something like expanding broadband, and, exactly how that money would be used, for what purposes, and, timeline, and what the outcome and how we're going to be able to judge success. But that being said, I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo.
Sorry, I just wanted to provide further clarity through you to the members, and again, thanks to Councilor Payano for his question. I believe, yes, $150,000 was done for broadband for a study. These monies would be allocated for implementation for the actual infrastructure that is needed to expand broadband throughout the city. I think you prefaced the conversation with a question. I didn't really hear a question. I just want to make sure I answer if there is a question in there, that I answer it correctly, or to the best of my ability.
No, on that last one was just a statement, but I appreciated that you knew which grant I was talking about, and you were able to let us know the amount that we already spent, and you connected it. I guess there was an unasked question, which I was wondering, which is, was this connected to those previous efforts? And what you've just acknowledged is that they are. So even though the council had not seen sort of the outcomes of that $152,000 grant, it seems like one of the outcomes, or like the next step, is this increasing broadband. What I would just suggest, that I think that type of information would be great, not just for counselors, but just the public at large, just to understand what that project entails.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
And I apologize. I know it looks like I have two screens, so I'm like looking back and forth here. So I'm not. It's not that I'm not paying attention here.
All right, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, I just wanna. I wanna kind of like go through a few of these to see if we agree upon what we have in front of us is good, or if we need a lot more detail, or we need details, or we don't need nothing at all. So I hear from Mr. Councilor Payano that we, in terms of the senior center, the $2 million, we clear on that, all right? Councilor Payano? I think that we good on that.
I'm sorry, Councilor Rodriguez. Can you define what do you mean by clear?
I mean, on the $2 million that is going to be invested on the senior center. So it's going to be done for construction. I think that, are we good on that?
So, Councilor Rodriguez, are you able to answer what construction are we doing?
That you're looking for the construction piece of it, right? Like the details on the construction that's going to happen.
And I would say, Councilor,
like a little estimate, right?
So like Councilor Rodriguez. So I would say for all of these pieces, I'm definitely looking for more details. I think that the one with the senior center might be I don't know. I mean, the administration has all the information in front of them, but the reason that I highlighted the senior center one was that I thought that might be the easiest one for the administration to sort of come up with the cost of things and what they were thinking. The other one that because I think anytime that you're dealing with construction, you're not dealing with abstract ideas and thoughts. Like there's a certain value to that. Someone already probably made an estimate. So even though it wasn't put to a bid, they have a certain range of what these costs could be. So I think that those are probably the easiest to sort of like work through. And that's why I highlighted it. I just want to, it's a little off topic, but Mr. Ianello, love the kitty. Hopefully, Councilor Rodriguez, I was able to answer your question.
That was a good one at the end. Well, I just wanna make sure that we because I mean it's going to be beneficial for the discussion, but I want to make sure that we kind of like looking for things, and they clear what we want, and that way they can send it over. On the item to clear and develop contaminated city-owned sites around the city, is that going to be? You would like to see more like specific locations for that?
So
On the number 2.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and through the council, to the committee, and thanks to Councilor Rodriguez for this question. So the planning department has identified at least two contaminated sites that need, if not immediate, but close to immediate attention, which are the Tamburello site, which is past Commonwealth Motors. I'm starting to get
Marston Street, Tomborello's on Marston Street.
Marston Street, that's right, yeah. On Marston Street, I know because I drive in on Marston Street every morning, and Commonwealth Motors is currently where my car is because I got into a little fender bender a few days ago. But so that's one site. You know, the assessment of that site alone, we don't know what we could find in these places, right? And that's definitely one problem site. The second problem site being the Merrimack paper site, which is
Merrimack Street.
On Merrimack Street. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at least those two, right? And we put this money in here. I want to be also very, very open about this, right? We have applied for some monies to help us in the assessment for this, and we don't know where those money, if those monies are coming, but we see that this particular grant funding will lend itself, because it is a public health hazard, will lend itself to cover those expenses, either if we need to, if we don't get the grant, and or if we need to cover additional expenses, because once the sites get opened up, we don't actually know what the cost will be.
All right. I have another question on the $19 million. That's going to be for water and sewer infrastructures. And that's going to be for to do actual work, or that's going to be more like to do to what?
Yeah. So that's a Mr. Chairman, through to the members again. Thank you to Councilor Rodriguez for the question. The $19 million for water and sewer projects, and again, infrastructure projects are not necessarily the cup of tea for this particular funding. They are, though, water and sewer projects are explicitly permissible through the guidance that we have been provided by the Treasury Department. The $19 million for water and sewer infrastructure projects are projects that are, and I might actually toss this over to Mr. Iannello in a moment here, but as I understand it, projects that are slated to begin for which we will need to incur debt, and therefore this might affect the rate, the water rate, or the debt, the overall debt structure of the account. And at this point, I will actually shoot it over to Mr. Iannello, who could better explain in terms of exactly how that would work. But essentially, those are projects that have been identified, I believe, and identified that we'll need to incur debt to do. Mr. Iannello.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think what Juan is trying to say, these projects, some of these projects are already scheduled to be or on the plans to be borrowed for, bonded. And if we can use ARPA funds instead and not borrow those funds, that'll save the ratepayers directly, because all of the expenses of the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund have to be paid by the ratepayers. So if there's several million, 19 million worth of projects that we can spend the ARPA funds on, that's debt service that will not have to be absorbed by the ratepayers.
In terms of the project related to the census, so you're gonna send more clarity. You're gonna be adding more clarity on that. The $1 million.
Sorry, the census project.
Yes. to address issues faced by our community deemed to
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
census tract.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Counselor, Mr. Chairman, through you to the members. So that's just we most of the city is within a qualified census tract, which the interim the treasurer, the Department of Treasury's guidance explicitly says, this is a community that is within the census tract because it meets these parameters, right? Some of the public health factors that led in a community like Lawrence to the amount of of positive COVID cases and subsequent deaths are related to housing instability. This $1 million expenditure is related to ensuring that we are expanding affordable housing opportunities and homeownership opportunities. Among these things, considering talking about a affordable housing trust fund and other things that will help alleviate that. Those pressures on the housing market that continue to lead to, in our families, families in the city of Lawrence, overcrowding, inaccessibility to affordable housing. That's what those $1 million project is about.
So on the other one, which is to address disparity in health outcome, the city standing environmental justice and climate change, $4 million. That's going to be related to construction projects.
I'm sorry?
The $4 million to address disparity in terms of climate change and environmental justice community and climate change. So those are going to be related to construction projects.
These are going to be closely related to the assessment of preparedness for our city for the climate change and the effects that it will have on cities like ours with who are environmental justice communities. These are both construction projects that are related to preparing us for the public health outcomes of climate change, and in addition to projects that help alleviate some of the environmental factors that lead to higher indexes than any community or than most communities in the Commonwealth of things like asthma, COPD, stuff like that, things that can be alleviated through things like increased expenditure in infrastructure that will lead to more walkable streets, public transportation, cycling, things that will really encourage the use of this infrastructure and discourage the use of pollutants that, again, we know to determine outcomes in public health in communities that are crowded like Lawrence. And so that's what this particular project would be about.
I think that we have a good idea as of what every project is going to be about. But like Councilor Payano says, I guess we're gonna need that on paper. Having that each of those well explained as you did it today in more details, I think that will help the discussion.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez.
Councilor Rodriguez, are you satisfied? If so, I do have a question and a comment.
Yes, definitely satisfied.
Thank you. So to you, Mr. Chief of Staff, with respect to Mr. Rodriguez's item, Both Tomborello and Merrimack Paper have had a long history of, in Tomborello's case, Superfund monies and exploration, remediation, cleanup. And Merrimack Paper, to an extent, has also had quite a bit of work. Do we foresee, you made some comments about we don't know what we might find. Do we still see that as being significant risk of contaminants that we are unaware of, in some cases up to 25 years later?
So I can speak at least to one of those sites, which I actually personally had the opportunity to tour myself. There are still mixed materials at the Merrimack site in particular that would require a deep assessment of whether they are health hazards or not, right? And that's based on my conversations that I had with the folks that were present at the time, which included Pedro Soto from planning department, as well as some contractors that would actually be going in there to do the cleaning, right? And before they can do the cleaning, they have to go and make the assessments. In that tour, they mentioned multiple times that they would indeed need to continue to assess that particular site, given that they would have to make a case-by-case assessment of the things that are around the site or in the site, especially given that it is a site that, as I understand it, was victim to a fire, if not multiple fires. But yes.
Yeah, definitely a lot of chicanery going on there with multiple fires and subsequent problems for the city. So yes, I look forward, that's in District E. So I do look forward to the city developing a plan for that site. Long overdue, long overdue. It has sat there, and not only is it an eyesore, but it's a risk to public safety in its current condition, and an added cost to the city with, respect to safety and fire watches and whatnot. When you have that opportunity over at the Tomborello site, I think you'll find quite a bit of exploratory work and remediation have been done, and we should have a pretty good assessment as to what we own with the Tomborello site. So with that, I will thank you for your response, and Mr. Rodriguez for the time. So with that, are there further questions, comments, or motions with respect to this item?
I'll make a motion to send it over to the full council as a committee report.
Mr. Rodriguez has made a motion to send this item to the full council as a committee report, neither favorable nor unfavorable. I do not, is there a second? And the motion fails for lack of a second.
Motion to table.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Payano to table. It's been properly seconded by Ms. Levy. There is no discussion on a tabled motion. Ms. Halloran, please take the roll call.
Mr. Abdu, it looks like Council President LaPlante wanted to speak on this item. Is it possible for me to retract my
Yes.
motion to table?
Yes,
Then
sir.
I will retract my motion to table to allow Council President an opportunity to speak on it.
The motion has been withdrawn by its sponsor, Mr. Payano. I want to offer my apologies to Council LaPlante, who had contacted me prior to the meeting seeking the opportunity to speak. I did acknowledge and tell him he would, and I then dropped the ball out of a great deal of hunger and being tired. So my apologies to President LaPlante. With that, I would like to recognize the councilor from District F, President LaPlante.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Reinell and Mr. and Chief Jaramillo. I sent an email on September the 30th looking for some information that I think some of the city councilors had. My records don't show that I received a response to that. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention and making sure that that doesn't fall between the cracks. It looked for some information dealing with the, I think it was called the CLFRF expenditures. I think there was a 2-pager. I think it was already mentioned this evening. I was hoping to get a copy of that. I wanted that to be sent not only to me, but to the chairman and to copy to the city clerk and make sure that the counselors, all the counselors have it. And then I had a couple of other questions regarding eligibility for funding and the timeline, which I think we talked about at the last minute, but I just wanted to see that in writing. So I just want to make sure you got that information and in email.
Anybody?
I'll take a look in my emails and make sure it was forwarded to you, but the 2-page document that you're referring to, I think is what Councilor Rodriguez has. So I'm not sure if it went directly to him. I'll have to check my emails. I just don't recall whether Juan or I sent it, but I'll take a look tomorrow, make sure you get it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just so that where there's no mix up, I'll just read as a brief email. This was on September 30th at 7:30 to Mr. Arnell and Mr. Jaramillo. As a follow-up to last night's Budget and Finance Committee meeting, I'm requesting number one, the documentation about the $57 million in CLFRF expenditures that Councilor Rodriguez referenced in his comments. Chief Jaramillo did a very good job explaining and the funding priorities. And I think the entire city council would benefit from this documented information. I ask that you send this to me, Budget Chairman Abdu, and copy the city clerk. I will then forward the information to the full council. Number two, what is the eligible for funding? What is eligible funding under the CLFRF? I understand that there may be more guidance from the federal government, but please provide to me the latest guidance of what the funds may be spent on. And thirdly, what is the timeline for finalizing and submitting funding proposals? I have until the end of 2024, and that's a question mark. And when must the expenditures be completed? And I have end of 2026. For simplicity, please provide the city's timelines for these funds. Thanks for your commitment to our city. On behalf of the city council, we look forward to partnering with you on these important decisions. So if you don't have that, you should have it. I'd be happy to resend that to both of you.
Okay.
Mr. Chief?
All right, yeah. So I will work with Mr. Ainello to get that to you, those responses. It looks like those responses are pretty much all set. I'll make sure that we get those to you tomorrow morning.
Great. I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. It looks like this document may stay here tabled. It doesn't look like if it's going to go. If it is going to go, if there is a motion to somehow move it up, I would like the courtesy to at least have an opportunity at this level to speak on it. If it's not going up this evening, I'm going to cut my comments right here. I just know that as the council president, I will not have, unless I pass the gavel, an opportunity to speak on this matter at the full council. I do have one more comment, but I will hold that to myself if this matter remains at the committee. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with respect to the president's comments, I'm not sure where we go with this.
Motion to table.
There's a motion. There's a motion by Mr. Payano. It's been seconded by Ms. Levy to table this matter. There is no discussion. And I'm going to ask Clerk Callan to please take the roll call.
Sure. Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Ana Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Motion is the item is now tabled. Are there any other items that any member wishes to entertain this evening, or are there any motions?
Motion to adjourn.
There is a motion to adjourn by my esteemed colleague, Counselor at Large, Anna Levy. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Counselor Payano. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk Callan, please take a roll call to adjourn.
Sure. Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Counselor Emma Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes, it's 4-0. We stand adjourned. Again, I want to thank Clerk Halloran as well as Mr. Mejia in the back for supporting us this evening and all of the city officials that answered our questions. To my colleagues and those at home, good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Enjoy the night.